His name is Ganesh Kumar Subramanian. Now, Ganesh is an engineer by training and he's a self taught programmer. Ganesh is also the co founder of Kabadiwala Connect, which is an award winning social enterprise in the field of waste management. For those who understand what Kabadiwala is, I don't know the Tamil word for it, but Kabadiwala takes away all of the unused items from home. Now, starting as a developer at Kabadiwala, he has grown into the organization and has contributed to various different verticals within the company. So now, ranging from project management to product development, he has done all of it. So today, Ganesh is going to give us a talk about how to let's design a solution, right? So please welcome Ganesh Kumar Subramanian on stage. Ganesh, the stage is all yours.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay, fine. Thanks for the intro. And can you also see my screen?
yes, we can see your screen, Ganesh.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for the intros. I'm not going to get too much into who I am at the beginning of this presentation. There's a reason for that, and also I'm keeping the topic too generic. It's design a solution, but I'm going to break the whole talk into like two sections. The first being it's going to be a little bit more technical, but I'm going to speak about what we did at Kabadiwala Connect, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and what the solution is. To be honest, it's going to be a completely very different sessions from what you've attended in this. I've been watching the last two sessions, very informative. But here, I think this is more. I would say is my idea is to introduce you guys to something like this, which I believe is like something like a social enterprise is lacking a lot of engineers and a lot of designers coming in. So I hope this is some sort of a trigger for you guys. And finally, the second part, I'm going to talk about the journey. I hope I'm not too preachy in that, but then the idea is that during this whole journey, like 6 years of being in Kabadiwala Connect as an engineer, I think there are things that I've learned which I would like to share, and so that people can learn about that as well. So let me just go into the first part of the presentation, problem and the solution. So let me first, like you said, Kabadiwala Connect is a social enterprise. So I wanted to just introduce what a social enterprise is. The social enterprise is a for-profit business. I think that is something people generally don't get. We are not an NGO. We are not working just to for a social cause. You can say it in two ways. We are like a traditional NGO, but we focus on generating revenue streams, or we're like a traditional business which is trying to create some kind of a social impact. And the social impact that Kabadiwala Connect tries to create is very closely aligned with waste management, climate change, sustainability, that kind of a thing, right? So to start off, I wanted to start with like where I know all of us have been talking. Anyone who's speaking global warming, climate change, one of the major iconic agreement was the Paris Agreement, which was signed some 5 years back, and the goal there was to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius and ultimately at 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, what does this mean is basically reducing about 26 billion tons of CO2 emissions. And during the Paris Agreement, what happened was like 195 countries came together and they said they'll do XYZ. And all of this is actually contributing to only 50% of it. Like, forget hitting the 1.5 degree mark. Even to hit the 2 degree mark, we are struggling, and we are struggling by a lot. Like only half of it is being achieved. We still have to reduce about 15 billion tons if at all we have to achieve the kind of a target that we're setting in ourselves. And as designers, like most of you guys, I think one of the key solutions to this problem that that the industry has come up with is the circular economy. And what is circular economy is a more of a business logic where you try to keep the material or the resource in circulation as long as possible, right? And design plays a very key role in this, but it's not only about design. It's about production, responsible production, and how you're going to recover that material, how you're going to use it as a raw material back. So the idea is to maximize the value of material that keeps circulating in the economy. And just to give you like an example around this, right? Like for example, let's say PET bottles, and any drinks that you buy has this label in it. Now, if you look at the labels here, is actually stuck with a gum. If any of you have opened it, it's actually stuck with some kind of a gum. But if you look at the recycling process, right, like how the PET bottles get recycled, people recover that, and we have run our own facility where we had to give someone a knife to actually cut that label out because it's stuck with them. So if I have to improve my efficiency, I have to do that. But if you see the same thing in Tokyo, in Japan, the same bottle, to be honest, it's even the same company who does that there. They have a easy to peel way for the sticker. So it's like, it's actually from the design perspective itself, it's designed for recycling. So that kind of a mentality coming in is very important. Why is that important? Because waste management is a huge issue, and about 15% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming out because of the waste sector. And more you recycle, more circular economy, and you're actually reducing this, right? Uh, Taking India as an example, India generates about 68.8 million tons of waste, and about 91% of it ends up in the landfills. And another huge problem is the ocean plastic leakage, which I think is like the hottest topic right now. About 8 million tons of plastic is what is getting into our oceans every year, and about 82% of it is coming through Asia. And this is a huge problem. This is not only in Asia, this is across the developing countries. And this is the problem that we are trying to solve. And how is, before I go into how, it's more like, why is this happening, right? Like, why is the whole plastic leakage happening? Why are our landfills getting filled so soon? It's primarily because of this traditional waste management system that we have, where we start off with the problem is unsegregated waste. To be honest, that's what we put out right now, and that's collected on a door-to-door basis. Then you would have seen this across Chennai. If you guys, wherever you live in any developing countries, you would have seen a similar system, which is, to be honest, is a cut copy paste of a very westernized system, a very centralized, where you take the waste all to one spot, and then you segregate it, and then you take it. And this is failing largely in across these countries, and primarily because it's a centralized nature, it's high on transportation cost. There are various reasons. Let me not go too much into that. But our solution to this problem was the informal sector, right? When I say informal sector, it's basically, I'm talking about informal waste sector specifically, and this includes your waste pickers, and then you have the kabadiwala na Tamil you can say Kailangadakarna. So you have the kabadiwalas. Then you have people who buy material from the kabadiwala who are some sort of an aggregator, and then it finally goes into recycling, blah blah blah. Now this industry or this supply chain is largely ignored. And just to give you some numbers on these guys, there are about 1.5 million waste pickers across the country. About 1% of the world population is actually employed in waste picking. And they recover single-handedly, this supply chain recovers about 20% of the recyclable waste that we generate. And they generate a savings for municipality. So if the waste pickers and the kabadiwalas are not there in Chennai, the corporation will be spending 24,500 rupees more on every ton of the waste that they have to collect, right? So these guys are actually creating savings for the municipality, but their state is very bad. They earn about 300 rupees a day. That is how they live their life. And our goal was to, can we use this informal economy, which is across, it's just to show that, the solution is scalable. It's not only an Indian problem, it's not only a Chennai problem. This is there across your Latin Americas, your Africas, and Southeast Asia. And about 93% of the world's informal employment is in these countries. And our solution was to, can we use these guys to make our waste management better? Because they're already doing it. They're already widespread. But there was no literature that was talking about this. So the first thing that we did is, like in 2015, we started doing a survey of this informal sector. So collect data, right? If you want to post any story, if you want to create an impactful story, we always believe that data is the best way to do. And the literature was primarily speaking about waste pickers when they spoke about informal sector, and our goal was to look at the other side of the supply chain, the small aggregators, the large aggregators, and processors. So we did a very detailed survey of the informal sector in Chennai. We mapped about 2,000 kabadiwala shops in Chennai, and you can see that map there. You see how widespread they are, right? And we estimate that in Chennai, every ward there are like about 10 of these guys, right? So they're everywhere across the city. So we mapped about 200 large aggregators. So these are guys who are bigger, like I said, who collect material from these kabadiwalas and they process it. Some of the things that we had some key learnings out of this, right? Like the whole decentralized nature of them makes it what is cheaper. Like we believe that if I employ the informal sector to do door-to-door collection in Chennai, It can be 20% cheaper than what corporation is spending right now. They're highly entrepreneurial, so they are they're not material specific, so they'll collect any sorts of material. So there's a problem of plastic. These thin plastics are the major contributors to this ocean plastic scene. And these guys don't collect this because it doesn't have a value. So if you create a value in the supply chain, these guys have the capability to, recycle more and more. They are technology accustomed, and this is from personal experience. We have deployed tech solutions for these guys, and they are capable of using it. Also, primarily because the second generation of entrepreneurs have started taking over. So it's very interesting that way. They are highly resilient. That this COVID situation was bad. Like, waste speakers had no way to sell the material. They were not allowed to go out, and all that happened. But during this whole phase, right, what was beautiful was the supply chain supported each other. Like, the kabadiwalas were making sure the waste pickers had food. The guys who were on top of it didn't ask for that. There's always a transaction advance that is given and blah blah. So they didn't ask for it. So they made sure that the supply chain was intact. And when this whole lockdown lifted, everything went back to normal quite fast. Right? So that resilience is what these guys showed. And like I said, they can recover high material. So we are actually promoting these guys as a solution to our waste management problem. So these are just some stats. They actually collect 130,000 tons of the recyclables that we generate. That's about 24% of all the recyclable waste that city generates. There's a huge advantages of integrating this informal sector. You get public sector savings. You improve the livelihoods of the people, which is more important. I feel even these waste pickers, like I said, they generate about a 28,000 rupees savings for the municipality, but they earn about 300 rupees a day. So that's the reality of the situation. We can, by integrating them, we can improve their safety. Like, none of these guys have gloves when they go for waste picking. No one is working in any kind of a safe environment. None of that is happening. So you can improve that. You can improve recovery rates. If you give them more formal access, I'm sure they'll be able to recover higher material and ultimately lead to improve recycling rates. So this is just to give you an idea of, and I don't know how many of you guys know about this. So it's just to give you a sense of what kind of a sector this is and where design can actually even play a role. And the second part of my presentation is more about my journey. So I think now is when I'm going to talk a little bit more about myself, who I am and stuff. So I, like probably 80% of the Indians, finished engineering, and I started working for Wipro first. So I went in with a lot of dream, working in a corporate. I want to do X, Y, Z. I started well, to be honest. Like, how you have this training batch in the initial phases, and I topped the batch. They gave me the higher salary and all kind of gamification, if I have to say, that happened initially. And then they ultimately put me into a role of a service desk agent. And I knew that was not a right fit for me. I knew I was creating zero impact. But it was during this time, right, is when I think I did some right things. Is to start looking for opportunities in the social enterprise space. This is when I learned about what a social enterprise is, what a startup is, and I wanted more and more. I wanted to create a more and more impact, right? And that's how I moved into Kabadiwala Connect. So I actually joined in as a front end developer. It's a pretty basic role. We had 2 employees in the office, and I was supposed to build one web-based platform, and that's how it all started. And the first thing that was very interesting for me is to be out of an environment that was just engineers. Right? Like, when I started with Kabadiwala Connect, we had a bunch of designers. These are not like traditional designers, I would say. So I had someone who was a glass designer. She used to melt glasses to make some kind of utility items for households. Then I had a journalist, I had a zoologist, and I had one proper designer in the team as well. And it all started with this exposure of being the only engineer in the room was very new, and I think that's something that is lacking for a lot of us. We end up being in a in places where we're surrounded with very like-minded people, or like very people from the same background. And I think when you're solving like key problems and stuff, it's very important to have these different perspectives. I think that molded me, right? And throughout this whole journey, so from there I slowly grew into this role of a co-founder. And throughout this journey, I think, to be honest, building solutions was not the toughest thing. I think that was the easiest bit of it. But building a team to solve problems, right? I think that was the biggest problem. That was the biggest challenge that I'm facing even today, right? Like, and I think like from I know, I mean, Saha was telling me about this whole thing on mentorship and how he wants to take this forward. So I thought it's very I felt there are like five key things I think everyone who's working in any industry should know. And if they follow, these are very simple things. It's not going to be something very new or stuff. But I feel like if you have these like five things, which I feel is what I did right, is what took me in this whole journey. So these are some of my key learnings from journey, and this is what I look for in a team that's going to build great solutions. Right. The first one is be the yes man, take up responsibility. When I say be the yes man, doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything the boss says. It's more about let me give an example, right? So I was a front end developer, and when I started, like I said, I had to build a web based dashboard. The second thing that as a company we decided was to set up our own recycling facility, and I was again equipped to do some kind of a software solution for it. But then I knew we were a very small team. I knew there were only two people, so I started getting more and more involved in the operations, right? So once I started doing that, of course, my product started getting better as well because I knew what was happening on the field, how things were moving. But apart from that, it also showed some kind of a ownership to my bosses, right? And that kind of ownership, I feel, is something. These are small things when you're in a team you show. That's very key for your growth. The second one is don't feel too attached to your work. So this is something I feel that it's a natural instinct. You're going into a presentation. Let's say you work 5 days on some interface, and you go into the meeting, and the first thing your boss says is this shit. And the moment that we hear that, we start to get a little bit defensive. Uh, I mean, yeah, you should defend it in a way, but then also, I think it's very important for us to listen why the other person said that thing, right? And we all know, design is an iterative process, and everything is iterative. So that listening to the problem, even however offensive, however offensive you feel about it, but it's very important to hear the other person out, and that is something I feel is not many of us are accustomed to doing, and I think that is a key characteristic that we have to develop, so that end of the day, both of us in the meeting are trying to get the product to somewhere where it's actually nice. So we need to have that kind of an understanding. Second is working hard. So this is a baseline. I might be a little bit old school on this, but I strongly believe there's no shortcut, there's no smarter way. Like ultimately that you can do. Yeah, you can work smart, but at the end of the day, unless you work hard, you're not going to achieve anything great. Uh, second last thing is about communication, communicating with clarity. So this is again like especially for me as a developer, when I moved into a managerial role, right? What was very difficult was to communicate to my team, and keeping them motivated was very difficult because I was not used to. I was always used to a person who was doing all the work by myself, and now I had to give work for people, and I need to follow up and all that. And this is where I think the simple protocols of having structured conversations, putting out things like, okay, what are people going to do, like a task for the day, and then following up with it. Those kinds of structures is very important. And also when you're in a meeting, it's very important, especially when you're in some kind of a leadership meeting, right? It's very important that you communicate with very less words, but you're creating a huge impact. And that's something we don't work all the time. We feel that we're technically strong. I can go pitch this, but it's always important that we think that how in a very short time can I communicate something highly impactful. That's a skill I think is something I learned, and I think something people should adopt. Show resilience, right? So this is something I can take the example of the informal sector itself, where you're bound to face failures, right? You are bound to fall down, but it's all about how quick you get up, right? I know it's kind of a rocky dialogue I'm saying, but then that is the essence of resilience, and I think that is something that people have to showcase more and more. So again, like these are five things I feel. I this is just from my experience. What I feel is very important. It's very subjective. You guys can think. You guys cannot disagree, agree. It's totally up to you guys. But I feel that this forms some kind of a baseline, right, for you to grow within the organization. And this I'm telling from my own experience. So this is pretty much it. Like I said, two sections of it. This section is more. The last section was more about my journey. The first was technical, and I'm up for questions on either. Any questions at all?
Yeah, we are waiting for it. We are getting some comments like, yeah, it was inspiring, amazing, but
Thank you. Thanks.
no questions yet.
I
Maybe
think
I'll just use this as one opportunity to say one more thing, right? Like I spoke a lot about waste management and stuff, and I think the main problem starts with this whole source segregation, and I think that's something people wherever I can speak, I try to. You guys can start segregating your waste if you're actually doing a great job. Because I have been to the field, I've seen these guys working, and I know waste pickers. You know, waste pickers go through your dumps, the waste, the bins that are there on the street, right? Just think about once when you're throwing your full biryani packet into it. Someone is going to get into that. They're going to use their bare hands, look through it. So always segregate your waste. There's all. I think corporation is doing kind of enough already for you to segregate your waste and give it. If you guys can, if all of us can, take that initiative and start segregating better, putting our waste better, I think it's going to help a lot of people. And this is something like we don't know, right? It's not we're doing it intentionally, but I think that is one thing I just want to plug. All of you start segregating your waste. It's better not only for you.
That's a perfect finish, Ganesh. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I think Ganesh, there is one question
Yeah.
by Piyush.
Yeah.
He asks, "Is there any tips on team building and communication in intent to them?"
I think it's all about involving the guys. To be honest, if you have a leadership meeting, right, like that's how it works. You have a meeting with your top C-level team, and then I be the bridge between these guys and my team end of the day. And if I'm gonna keep them in the dark of what happened in that room, it's not gonna that's not gonna help in any way. So I always say you can't give tasks to people. You're only giving them problems to solve. You have to make them own those problems, and that's how I think that intent comes, right? And when you're not given do this, you just do that. But when you're told solve this problem for me, Dana, that's a different approach. That's something I did that mistake, and I've corrected that also. So I think that is how you build intent. Keep them involved. Keep them, always show them the bigger picture. Right? Even it's not they're not building a button. They're not building a window right now. They're actually solving something much bigger. So keep them involved in that bigger vision. I think that helps a lot.
Thank you very much, Ganesh.